I would like to welcome you to this FOSA-sponsored webinar and thank FOSA for giving us the opportunity to speak to you today. My colleague Martin Rosenberger and I will share exciting information about Frauscher and its innovative strides in FTS or Frauscher tracking solutions. FTS is a fiber optic based technology for railroad specific applications. So let's look at the agenda for today's presentation. I will briefly review Frauscher's profile, which will illustrate the capabilities we bring to the table to further fiber optic sensing technology. I will also discuss the present status of the challenge in monitoring the immense North American railroad network and present possibilities as to how Frauscher tracking solutions could address these challenges. And later, my colleague Martin will explain FTS in detail, including currently available applications, future capabilities, and addressing the challenge of monitoring the expanse of the railroads. As said, a bit about Frauscher, which was founded 30 years ago in Austria to this month. Our headquarters is located in picturesque St. Marienkirchen near the German border, and our core business has been built around axle counting and wheel detection systems. Over 90% of this business involves highly critical safety applications like train detection for signaling. Without overstating, our products are the gold standard for critical train detection in many parts of the world. We service railroads in over 80 countries. We support almost all global integrators and many prime operators. This requires the highest standards of engineering for reliability, precision, and performance to support the most critical safety applications, towards which Frauscher has proven hardware designs, software solutions, and algorithms. Frauscher is global. Frauscher has an established worldwide presence, and we continue to grow. We service the global market from 11 locations and many affiliates, as illustrated. Our North American operations were established in 2015 in Princeton, New Jersey. In a relatively short period of time, we have successfully deployed critical train tracking solutions in several key installations, including MTA Baltimore, Metro Houston, Alaska Railroad, and are currently working on applications with Toronto TTC and several freight railroads. Coming back to the issue at hand, we are here today to highlight the monitoring challenges faced by today's North American railroads. It is a massive undertaking and responsibility. Let me take a moment to illustrate why. Monitoring the North American railroad system, and this is the big challenge. 90% of the North American railroads are freight. They are categorized as Class 1, regional, short line, industrial, railroad lines. Depending upon size, they are intermodal ports and facilities. And as indicated, there are 140,000 track miles alone of the Class 1 railroads in North America. This includes yards, sidings, and parallel tracks. To keep trains running safely and smoothly along this massive railroad network, consistent data and information is needed, such as for train tracking, asset condition monitoring along the right-of-way, and for rolling stock. In addition, there's also requirements for real-time monitoring of work crew safety and security along the track. Over 30% of this vast network that has to be monitored is considered dark territory, which essentially means it is non-signaled. Although these areas have lower density of traffic, they still have monitoring requirements that are not currently being met. To clarify, for those not from the railroad industry, asset condition monitoring refers to events such as detection of rail defects, wheel flats, and rockfall. Safety and security refers to issues such as vandalism, cable theft, trespassers, and work crew safety. In addition to freight lines, of vital importance is 100+ passenger rail transit operators in North America who face issues similar to those of the freight railroad operators. Over 5 billion passengers rode on North American railroads last year. And as urban areas continue to grow, this number will only increase. The safety and security issues in the US and worldwide have continued to grow and are a major concern to public and passenger safety. Keeping these passengers safe is a serious issue and high priority. So let us talk about what is the present status of monitoring. The events that we have mentioned, asset condition monitoring, safety and security, train tracking, are still being monitored. They are, however, being monitored by periodic and discrete monitoring systems. And although FTS does not intend to replace existing detectors, it does aim to provide a solution to the data gaps that exist for continuous monitoring of multiple events, such as train tracking, asset condition monitoring, and safety and security. In present-day monitoring, multiple detectors are needed that are multiple data network heavy. They result in many separate data integration efforts, and they also result in many different engineering, operational, and maintenance undertakings, all of which involves extensive resource. So in brief, just to introduce, before Martin will fill in the details, let us talk a little bit about the role of FTS, or Frauscher Tracking Solutions. So Frauscher Tracking Solutions uses DAS-based technology with the potential to provide a continuous and complete monitoring capability for events that happen on the right-of-way of railroads. Basically, it detects activity that produces measurable acoustic energy. Some characteristics of this technology that make it attractive are that it monitors multiple events using sparsely positioned interrogators. It utilizes only a single dark fiber of a fiber optics cable for detection. It reduces the number of data networks, and it minimizes operations, maintenance, and resources. Since the detector itself is a fiber optics cable, it has no moving parts, no electronics or electrical systems near the track. It requires very little attention or maintenance, even over the long term. Of course, there are many challenges in deployment of this technology presently that have to be overcome. One of them is the need for ongoing improvements of the interrogator itself, the data storage capabilities, and the requirement for very complex analytics. The need to increase the footprint of high-quality fiber optics along the right-of-way of railroads is also highly crucial to this effort. The possibility of achieving a larger footprint of fiber optics can be justified via many means. One example could be may be meeting additional requirements of telecom providers for high-speed mass-scale connectivity. However, there could be other justifications for the viability. With this brief introduction, I would like to have Martin carry this webinar forward and give you more details on the present and future status or planned status of FTS. And to start with, let's watch a video that shows the multiple applications that are possible using FTS.
Yes, Vivek, thank you very much. Also a warm welcome from my side. And let's start with the video showing some possibilities of distributed acoustic sensing in railways or in railroads. We see the fiber. We also can see here wheel sensors made by Frauscher. So one technology does not actually substitute the other. It is in addition. And when a train moves along the track, it generates vibration. And those vibration can be picked up by the fiber laying nearby. And those blue circles simulate the vibrations going into the ground from the individual bogies. And as Vivek said, it is possible to detect multiple events along the fiber, even passing trains. As the fiber is the sensor, the fiber is the only thing that is needed in the track. And the end of the fiber is connected to an interrogator that sits in a station building, in a data center, wherever the fiber is laying. FTS then provides an output that can be displayed to a dispatcher or a signaler, as we can see here. In this case, we see a station with classic axle counting systems in the station area and fiber detection along the block lines. And when you click on the train, you get information about the train. However, if the system picks up something wrong on the train, it may display this and indicate this red immediately. And in this case, we see a flat wheel that is injecting extra vibration into the ground. A train can also have the rail break, and this break may be the source of extra vibration that can be picked up by the fiber and actually displayed then to the signaler. The same is there for security applications. If you are in a tunnel and people are walking across the fiber, this can be picked up and an alert can be given. ETA, estimated time of arrival, is something that might be interesting for a lot of points along the railroad, and one of them might be a level crossing. To know exactly when the train is approaching the level crossing to optimize the closed times of grade crossings. Animals. If there is no fencing, then animals are not really welcome on the railroad. Another part is worker crews. When we know where the train is, and when we can even pick up the individuals walking close to the fiber, then there is a good opportunity to warn them in advance of the train. Trains approaching the station. Wouldn't it be nice to exactly know when the train is arriving at the platform? This is a possibility how it could be done in future. So we have seen now a number of applications. Some of them are reality already. Some of them will be deployed in the next months and years. Now, coming back a little bit to the sensor technology itself. Frauscher is a sensor technology company. Let's discuss and see how distributed acoustic sensing works. Distributed acoustic sensing is a subcategory of fiber optic sensing. And we have a small animation here, how the principle is. So we heard already that the fiber itself is the sensor. And within the fiber, there are minuscule particles or impurities. When a laser pulse is injected into the fiber, these particles cause some backscatter. And then if vibration attenuates the fiber, this backscatter is changing. And this change in the backscatter is evaluated and can be allocated to a position along the fiber. And this is how we can sense vibrations along the whole length of fiber. So the fiber is the sensor. That's the big part. Now we have identified 6 very important parts of all of this fiber optic sensing. First of all, it is important to have a signal that we want to detect. Then we need to have a transmission between the signal and the cable, because the cable is actually the sensor. Then if the sensor can detect that signal, it can be processed and applications can be derived. Let's have a look at the signals. Signals for distributed acoustic sensing can be pretty much everything that generates noise, respectively vibration, so structure-borne noise. This can be a train, this can be a tram, this can be a metro, this can be a freight train, this can be a broken rail joint, this can be people in the track, but also this could be people that have no good intentions and try to steal cable in the cable traffic. So everything that is generating vibrations is a potential source of signal. Now we need to go to the transmission. So what is the distance between the signal and the fiber, which is the sensor? So the location of the fiber is really important. And we have different installations. We can have the fiber buried in the ground, like here. We can have the fiber laying on top of the ground, in the ballast, for example. We can have the fiber attached to the rail. We can have it in a cable troughing, like on the bottom here. We can have it hanging on tunnel walls or on the masts of the catenary. So the transmission, as you may see, is then different. It's either short distance, it's longer distance. So this has a significant effect on how much signal arrives at the detector, which is the cable. And the cable itself has also an impact on the sensibility. The cable consists of various layers, and every layer added may attenuate the signal. And also the cable structure is of interest. And finally, the fiber itself, the optic fiber, the glass fiber itself, has also an impact on how sensible it is. In general, one can say the closer the signal is to the sensor, which is the cable, the better the transmission is, as a rule of thumb. So basically, we should place the fiber where the signal is generated, or at least as close as possible. So when the signal arrives at the fiber, we need to detect it. So the fiber needs to build these reflections and modify those light reflections. And then we can actually transfer this optic signal, this laser pulse signal, into an electrical signal, and this electrical signal can then be processed and analyzed. At the moment, various systems generate for a 1,000-kilometer line something like 27 terabytes of data, some a little bit less, some a little bit more, depending on the vendor. This is an enormous amount of data, and this is now what we need to actually transfer into information. Because data itself is useless, we want to pick only the information out of data, and this real-time processing requires intelligent algorithms and real-time processing. And this is a huge workload, and only clever algorithms and clever processing strategies can do that. Artificial intelligence is something that we have been looking into, and that is getting a more significant role in the future. Then, what applications are feasible? And some of them we will hear a little bit later are real already. Now let's see what kind of applications we have here. Train tracking. Trains generate a lot of vibrations, so this is good to be sensed. This can then support information about ETA and level crossings, can be used for informing passengers at a platform or warn passengers when a train is passing through. And generally, all the train management could be optimized or could be supported. Another field of application is asset condition monitoring. It is essential to detect various things that could threaten the safety of a railroad, and which could be a rockfall. When you are in a canyon or close to mountains, rocks that drop onto the track can actually cause serious harm to the railroad. But also things like broken rails, wheel flats, or catenary flashovers might be detected. And finally, security and safety. If there are individuals near or close to the track that are not supposed to be there, they might be detected, and warnings can be set off and measures can be taken. Worker crews that are supposed to be there and work might be warned, might be detected and warned of trains approaching the site where the work crew works. And finally, vandalism and terrorism is an important topic nowadays in these days, and detecting those individuals might be of interest as well. Now, just a brief overview of installations that Frauscher has done in the past 2 years on a global scale in pretty much every application: train tracking, asset condition monitoring, safety and security. Now let's have a look at the current capabilities. How does such a system look like? What components are involved? We have obviously the fiber at the bottom, and from one single location we can connect a fiber of a maximum length of 40 kilometers in each direction, which is around 25 miles in each direction. This fiber needs to be connected to an optics unit to transfer the light, to inject the light into the fiber and transfer the reflected light into electrical and data signals or digital signals that can then be processed and classified, where we then make information out of the data. And this is then output either to another machine or to a display to humans, a human-man-machine interface. Frauscher is in the lucky situation to have a real live installation with very good access close to the office in Austria at a live railway of Austrian Federal Railways. And this is how the signal would look like after classification. You can see the trains in the top and the signals they would generate over time. time is on the y-axis, so from actually now to the past on the bottom, and on the bottom scale we have the distance of the fiber. However, this is pretty tricky and nobody really wants to have a screen like that, especially railroaders are used to have a schematic track layout, and this translates exactly to the same signal that we have seen previously, but in a display that is designed to go for railroads. So when you click on top onto the individual trains, you get the information on where the trains are and what is the estimated time to arrive at the next station. And this is all automatically calculated and displayed. If you click again on the trains, this pop-up window would disappear and would make a clearer surface. We have heard about the applications already. We categorize them in train tracking, asset condition monitoring, security and safety. And I would like to pick a few of them and to go into details. The first one to be train tracking. And this is a video done by a drone overlaid with the analog signal or the process data, where we can derive the position, speed, direction, length of train, and the estimated time of arrival at the next point of interest. This can be used to optimize traffic management, to make train movements more efficient, to reduce the fuel consumption, to eventually warn on level crossings and announce on platforms or display when the train is going to approach. The next example that we want to take care or discuss is asset condition monitoring. And you can see a video done at Austrian Federal Railways where flashovers have been simulated. Flashovers between the catenary and masts can destroy the catenary on electrified lines, which has a significant impact, because if the catenary breaks, no train can go forward and backward anymore, and this would have a huge impact on operations. However, we want to start with the first one and go a little bit in details on broken rails, which is a significant topic. As we have seen in the video, trains may be the source of a rail breaking, and a broken rail may be the source of a derailment. So it would be really good if a train breaks a rail to detect that. And we saw it on the video, and this is also what we have been working on, and this is also a reality already in its basic status. So we are able to some extent locate those broken rails within a range of 30 to 40 meters, and this might prevent the next trains from derailment. And all of this is without any extra equipment close by the track. It's just the fiber that might be in place already. Another very successful opportunity is rockfall. So when rock falls off the mountains and block the right of way for the railroads, this is something that has to be taken care of. And this is how the signal would look like. And this is how it is displayed then to the dispatcher. And the dispatcher can then timely and precisely warn the train driver to stop before the train is actually hitting the rocks on the track. Another point that we had is security and safety. So if people are walking along the fiber, this can be picked up. This might be personnel or work crews that should be detected so that they can be warned of trains approaching their area. But this could also be trespassers or theft, cable thieves, or people that have vandalism in their mind, or it could be animals. The main part again is this: the fiber is the sensor and the source of signal needs to be close to the sensor to pick it up and to classify. This were a few applications that we have in place already. And now I would like to give a brief outlook of what could be achieved in the future. Asset condition monitoring was and is a very important topic. And we are right now in the situation that when something happens, we might be able to detect that, classify it, and report it to the railroaders. But wouldn't it be interesting to say, okay, we have points of interest, and we would actually want to detect if there is any change in the track, not only report when something has already broken, but wouldn't it be really nice to get some information when something is deteriorating, when we have rails shelling, when we have rails wearing, when tie plates are breaking, or when sleepers or when the ballast is not in a good shape anymore, when you have hollows below the ties. So actually, wouldn't it be really nice to say, okay, we can even predict when something is going to happen and therefore prevent something from breaking, because we can do maintenance before it is actually breaking, but as close to the breaking point as possible to optimize the resources spent. At the moment, we are at the detection level, so we can detect a lot of things, and we are working on classifications and output mechanisms to optimize asset condition monitoring. And that's the end of our presentation, and we have now the time to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Martin and Vivek. That's been very informative. We already have a couple of questions, and I wondered if you could first describe a little bit about the operational condition in installing equipment in monitoring rooms. Are there particular characteristics that they need to have?
Yes, indeed. The optics unit is comprising quite sensitive laser technology, which is sensitive to temperature. So depending on the technology used and the details of the components used, the usual operating temperature range is from around 0 degrees centigrade to 40-45 degrees centigrade. So it would be a building, a regular building is usually fine. If it is an outdoor shelter, it should be a double-walled shelter to make sure that the temperature doesn't increase, or an air conditioning is necessary to keep it within that level. But I believe in future, a lot of rail-hardened systems will arrive. So in the next 2-3 years, we might even get systems that are rail hardened in terms of to be capable of getting in higher temperatures and even lower temperatures to remove the necessity of air conditioning in those external huts.
That's very helpful. You've described some of the sort of potential uses. Can you detect the movement of trains at very low speeds?
Yes, indeed. But there is a limitation. When we have a freight train with freight cars, they would not emit any vibrations when they came to a complete standstill. And at the moment, the limit is between 3 and 7 miles an hour. And below that, it is difficult to detect. We are working on newer technology, newer generations of interrogators to reduce that even then, and we use logic to remember that the train has stopped. But at the moment we need a minimum vibration to detect it, but we would still report that the train is there when it came to a standstill.
Next, are there types of other monitoring systems that can be integrated directly into the sensing technology that can be used to alert?
Yes, and we have seen that in the video where we actually had a combination of axle counters for train detection in station areas and using FTS on the open line. So this integration is definitely one of our strengths, and this is possible with our system, yes.
And you've mentioned some of the applications that you're looking for sort of down the road and developing and sort of enhancements. Do you have a timeline for when and how those will be developed?
Yes, I would like to start with what we got already. So we have a number of applications, for example, rockfall, even in live operation already. So there are specific applications available right now. Some of the applications will arrive between mid and half next year, so around half into 2018. And we plan to get to this predictive, preventive topics around 2020 in that range.
Good. Are these technologies used, again, we're describing rail technologies, are railroads in particular countries using the technology more than others? Are there some countries that are farther ahead of the curve on this?
I would say the US is definitely on the front runners here. There are a few other railway operators that have, I wouldn't say similar, but close to interest in those fibers. One of them is German Railways. There is currently a tender going on in Indian Railways. Also, Japan Railways is working on that. So it's pretty much a global interest that FOSA could generate here. And but I would say the US is amongst the leading ones.
So we've talked about different technologies. Have you been using the technologies with other transportation, perhaps on roads, in sort of expressways? Do you see applications in that space as well?
Yes, this technology has been used in roads, especially in the UK. I believe there have been tests in other countries as well, but Frauscher has not been heavily involved in that. Frauscher is a railroad company, and this is where our focus lies. However, other road technologies are available as well and have been deployed.
Okay, I think that brings it to the end of the questions that I have. Maybe you sort of ask a broad question of what are the challenges, what are the barriers, what are the types of issues that railroads experience in terms of installation, and how do you address that? That's sort of a broad but open-ended question that you might be able to help.
Yes, the installation is of importance, absolutely. As we saw in the presentation, the fiber is the sensor, and it would pick up any vibration close by. That means if the fiber or the sensor is close to the target signal, then this is good. If it is further away, for example, if the right-of-way is something like 50 meters wide or 60 yards wide, and the fiber is very on the edge, on the perimeter of that right-of-way, then the target, which is the train or the track, is very far away. But if there is anything other close by, like roads, or we have, like in Austria, in our trial, we have a quarry close by, where they are breaking big stones and making gravel and ballast for railroads, and these are causing a lot of vibrations. So if the fiber is closer to sound or vibration sources other than what we want to detect, this may give disturbances into what we actually would want to detect. So the installation is really an important part, and this may give some limitations if the fiber, the sensor, is too far away from the signal that we want to detect and too close to disturbing signals that are actually not of interest to the railroad.
If I can interject for a second, Mark, from a business standpoint, one of the biggest challenges that we see, and Martin has already illustrated the various technical developments which are going on, but from a business standpoint, the viability of increasing the footprint of fiber by the railroads is key. We as vendors can bring the technology, the data storage, the analytics, the algorithms, and all the good stuff. But in the end, it is the railroads, the transits that need to have the fiber in the right place.
This is an application question. Maybe you can help address the frequency of false positives and how easily they can be determined that that is the case.
False positives is definitively an issue that has to be tackled, and it is depending on what is the detection of signals that are not supposed to be detected. As I said, if there is something close by that causes vibration but should not be detected, it may detect something incorrect. If the signature is similar to what we want to detect. And in good installations where the fiber is close to the target, close to the signal to be detected, and if this is a clear signature that can clearly be distinguished between nuisance or noise, then we have a very low false rate. And if we are in areas where we have those nuisance alarms, it might be necessary to zone out areas where we reduce or remove parts from being evaluated or from being alarmed. And this can also be done on a timeline. When we say, okay, during the day we have lots of people that work at a platform, but we want to see something if people are in a specific area only during nighttime, then the processing can be reduced or the alarming can be cancelled for the daytime areas or a programmable time, and only be on when we are when we are expecting then signals only to happen when we really want to detect it. So there are a lot of mechanisms, but this has to be tackled application by application.
I know you mentioned before that you were primarily focused on the railroad sector, but perhaps there's a business opportunity here. One question is, what about rail apps for entertainment? And they thought in particular roller coasters.
Haven't really thought about that. Yes, go ahead, please.
I was going to think that you may have a business opportunity for that, but that was what one questioner. On a more serious note, one questioner asked about protection of the fiber optic cable from vandalism. Is that an issue, and are there particular strategies to address that, perhaps in areas that are more prone to that?
Yes, and railroads do usually have quite good experience with vandalism and how to prevent that. And one possibility is to bury the cable. This is, for example, a method that is used in India to exactly prevent cables from being stolen, especially copper cables, but also fiber optic cables. So they have a rule to bury the cables to minimize vandalism.
Sort of along the same lines, question about temperature extremes such as frost. Does that have an impact on the performance?
That is a good question, and it depends a little bit on the application. If we want to detect a train which is causing massive vibration, it doesn't matter. And the fiber itself, the fiber cable is usually rated from something like -40 degrees centigrade to 80, 90 degrees centigrade. So pretty much everything that you would expect in a normal railroad. And in the ground, the temperature is even or the temperature range is even a little bit lower. So the fiber and the cable can definitely cope with it, and trains can be detected pretty much at any temperature.
And this may be a little technical to take offline, but can you explain how to use the technology to monitor traction power assets such as high voltage cables, switch gears, and substations? Are there special issues for that?
Yes, I know that fiber optic sensing is used for that, but predominantly not distributed acoustic sensing, but distributed temperature sensing. This is not really the expertise of Frauscher, but we have had a good contact with our colleagues from other companies, and they use this. To actually detect the temperature of power cables and power lines, and if there is some problems in the insulation or some extra rise in temperature, they can detect that and monitor the power flow to some extent, but definitively also the some kind of leakage or insulation failures. But this is not where Frauscher is heavily involved. The only thing with our that we have done is the flashovers of catenaries, which is actually generating a bang from the flash, like the thunder of the flash. This is what we have had quite good test results.
Good. Now, I had another question. Is there a depth of by which there's sort of a follow-up to this particular question, a preferred depth for burying the fiber?
Again, the principle applies. The sensor needs to be as close to the source as reasonably possible. That means the source is, for example, the train, which runs on the track, and the deeper you bury the fiber, the bigger the distance is, the more ground is in between that attenuates the signal. So pretty much the closer to the track, the better it is. And typical values are between 10 inches and 40 inches.
Okay, I'm pleased to say I have one or two questions about cost, but I won't ask that here. But I'll encourage those who may have those kinds of questions, those are always good signs, to contact you guys directly. Obviously, the material contains some contact information for you, but that's probably the best way to handle that. I'm getting up to the close of the hour, so I think I'll probably cut things off, but I did want to remind folks that, first of all, the presentation will be posted on the FOSA website. It probably takes about a day or so, so we'll be able to have that up, and candidly, that is actually where we get some of the most activity for these webinars that we do. Next, for the FOSA members, we will be having our regular member call on November 2nd and bringing folks up to date, but we do have another webinar scheduled on November 29th, and that will be the automated surveillance of critical assets through fiber optics, and our member company Asymmetric will be providing the information for that webinar. The sign up for the webinar is available on our website. And both Vivek and Martin, we thank you very much for what is a very informative webinar demonstrating one of the applications in the fiber optic space. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you all.
That concludes the webinar.